Maryland has seen a mix of Republican and Democratic governors. So is this dramatic of ticket splitting normal for the state, or is this something you haven't seen in recent election history?
We haven't seen it. And so that's why I think people look at this race, and I think it would be hard to imagine the Democrat in the Senate race here running so far behind the top of the ticket. Like we said, Kamala Harris is going to win Maryland by 30 plus points. And so Larry Hogan is different. Look, there are 17% of Maryland voters who are voting Harris Hogan. Will Hogan be able to keep that number of ticket splitters up by the time Election Day comes around is a question mark. I think much of that has to do with what kind of campaign Angela Alsobrooks is going to be running.
I want to read some numbers from your poll. Hogan has a 23-point lead with independent voters, and Harris has a 14-point lead among the independents. So how important are independent voters in Maryland right now, and how should candidates act accordingly?
It's huge. I mean, that swing you just said across independent voters is just mind-boggling. But independent voters are fickle. They can change their mind through the course of the campaign. They're not adhered to one party or another. And so that can change. So, but the fact that there is such a spread here just sort of testifies to the fact that, Larry Hogan casts his appeal beyond his Republican base. And they are going to be crucial, as are older voters. As we know, older voters they're going to make up the majority of the electorate in Maryland this year. I think 53% we're estimating will be age 50 plus. And they are more motivated to vote than younger voters. And so we ask people, on a 10-point scale, how motivated they are to vote. And there's a 17-point gap in people saying 10 out of 10 between those voters over 50 and under 50. So independent voters, older voters are going to be kind of the deciders here. Hogan has a 2-point lead among older voters, so there is a bit of an advantage, minor advantage there for him. But there's a lot of campaign left to run.
And 87% of older voters, 50 and above, are extremely motivated to vote, according to the poll. So what issues have you found matter most to them?
Well, in Maryland, the economy really looms large. Unlike a lot of the battleground states that we've spoken about, where we see immigration being sort of a big issue, with 55% of the electorate in Maryland being Democrat, that issue is much lower, although still important among the Republicans that are in Maryland. But the economy is really the number one issue. When we look at inflation, the economy and jobs, Social Security, among older voters, those three issues comprise 57% of the top issue that older voters say are important to them. And that's big among Republicans, it's big among independents, it's big among Democrats. And so when you think about older voters, you think about sort of tough economic times, one issue that really comes to mind is Social Security. And Social Security is a big deal in Maryland, as it is in many states. We've got 52% saying that Social Security is a major source of their income among older voters, or will be. Among those who are 65 plus, who are presumably collecting Social Security, 61% say it's a major deal. And so voters who can talk about Social Security, campaigns that can talk about Social Security are going to connect with these older voters and hopefully win them to their side. We know that it doesn't matter if you're a Republican, Democrat, or independent in Maryland, that Social Security is a salient issue, that voters are going to be much more likely to support the candidate who can voice that support for Social Security.
Do you think then it's safe to say, or fair to say rather, that if Hogan or Alsobrooks leans into these issues that matter most to voters, they could pull ahead come November?
Absolutely. And to focus on those issues for the section of the electorate who are going to show up. And talking about the issues that are important to them. And another one that we've talked about on previous polls is this issue of family caregiving. That is a huge issue in Maryland. 31% of older voters in Maryland are family caregivers. And, we know that there are more people who have been or expect to be family caregivers. Among Black voters 50 plus, 40% are currently caring for a loved one. And so this is an issue that is going to get hopefully more attention by the campaigns. And if I were the Hogan campaign, I would be talking about this a lot over the next 2 months.